Okay. So you were at the Florida Georgia game. Tell us just a little bit about what you saw. What are some takeaways for you for either team for that
Mm.
game?
Um, Takeaways okay, so Georgia led 28-3 at half.
Hmm.
Um, they were covering the spread at halftime, and yeah, I don't know. There was a lapse in the third quarter from Georgia's side where they had thrown a pick, and then Florida threw a bomb just to get back into it and cut it to a one score game actually late in the third quarter. And that was kind of nerve wracking. But then Georgia kind of reasserted dominance really, and kind of started running the ball, just being super physical. Florida never stopped Georgia's rushing attack. They just never did. Georgia ran for 240 and 4 touchdowns. That's really efficient. They did a really good job. Georgia, as long as they didn't turn the ball over, move the ball at will against Florida. Florida dismissed Brenton Cox. I don't know if you remember, he was the
Hmm.
5-star that actually transferred from Georgia. This morning they dismissed him from school.
Wow.
He had kind of a rough day, and I'm not sure really what happened, but Billy Napier said that he is no longer on the team. For Florida, man, like from that side of it, they're 4-4. Like they've lost to kind of all of their rivals this year, man. Like Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and LSU. Like that's like the big four for them, and they have Florida State yet. I guess you can try to beat one, but like that's really difficult. Like where we talk all the time about these first year head coaches and like where teams are.
Hmm.
Florida's got some soul searching. Like I understand that they fought against Georgia, but you still lost by 22 points, and you were clearly like the inferior team. Like that game actually wasn't that close.
Yeah.
Even as much as the scoreboard showed, like Georgia absolutely dominated. You have some coaches doing really well. Like what's your opinion on Napier? He's played 8 games now. He's 4-4. What's your
Hmm.
opinion on him this far, 2 months into the season?
Well, I think you kind of have to judge these first year coaches a lot based on what the expectations were to some extent.
Mm,
And I don't think anybody really expected Florida to be all that good this year. So it's not like it's everything's fine, nothing to see here. It's not like that because it is there are some problems there. Obviously, they need to work through. But I'm not like down on Napier in Florida like in the long run.
right.
I still think he was a good hire. Um, yeah, I think they'll be fine. He's got to continue to recruit. Obviously, they lost Cormani McLean, the number one
Oh,
corner in the country,
huge.
to Miami, a huge rival there in
Yes.
state, which is kind of shocking. I mean, as bad as Florida has been this year, Miami has cratered.
Been worse. Been
They've
worse.
been
Yeah.
worse. So yeah, like there are some things to clean up there. I do think that he's trying to build something from the ground up. Like this was not a situation with an incredible baseline of talent and culture and all of that. Like he
Yeah.
wasn't coming into a ready-made situation. If you want to compare it even to Kirby Smart, his first year at Georgia, they went 7-5, and I think that was even a little bit of a better situation than he was walking into here in Florida.
No doubt. But Florida does, Florida has talent. And you mentioned Cormani McLean. He's been 100% crystal ball to Florida for forever. Like
Yeah.
he was a Florida lock. And that was very shocking, not just to us, but to, I mean, people inside the Florida program that he,
Hmm.
kind of flipped almost and goes to Miami. Um, yeah, I, I guess, I guess I feel you. Like, I see where you're coming from. It's a little disappointing though. Like for them to come out and beat Utah week 1 like they did and look so good, and then to lose the games that they've lost since it's a little disappointing.
For sure.
They go to A&M this week, and then they get South Carolina. Those are kind of coin flip games. Like those could legit go either way. They could lose both of those games. Then you're 4-6, just fighting for some bowl eligibility at that point. But no, I guess I kind of hear where you're at. I don't know. I was a little unimpressed with it, maybe.
Hmm.
If you're not going to win games, at least get some 5 stars to keep the buzz. Like Miami, for example, we brought up Miami and Cristobal. They haven't been good this year at all. They have not been good, but you can kind of make up for all the losses if you bring in 5 stars. Like it's kind of true. And
Yeah.
like you at least have way more leeway with the fan base and all that. And then, I he needs to get some at some point. Like Napier needs to get some 5 stars at some point because the talent gap between Georgia and Florida right now is huge. Like
Yeah.
if you're Florida, you do have to beat Georgia at some point. You can't just
Mhm.
lose to them every year and keep your job. You have to beat Georgia, and there's a huge talent gap right now, and he needs 5 stars because there was a visible difference on the field that Georgia just simply had way more players than Florida
Mhm.
did. So yeah, and enough about Florida. I guess Georgia impressive in spurts. Like Georgia's good is as good as anybody's. Like Georgia still
Yeah.
has like that elite ceiling. And we'll talk about that more here in the week 10 preview, I guess. A lot of good stuff coming up.
Yeah, we'll definitely get more to Georgia. We'll talk about them, and we'll talk about Florida more in the off season. Running out of things to talk about them for the actual in season, and
There you
yeah.
go.
Let's move on. Ohio State, Penn State. That was kind of the big game of the noon window. Ohio State was behind for a good chunk of this game, and then sort of, I don't know, I guess turned on the afterburners for a stretch in the fourth quarter, and eventually wins this game 44-31. Penn State gave it a good fight. This was a lock fight for us, by the way. I was on Ohio State to cover. You were on Penn State. You were obviously the winner there with a 15.5 point spread. Putting that aside, just talking about the game itself, what are your takeaways for? Well, let's start with Ohio State. They're the team that won. They're the team with the national title aspirations. Losing for a big chunk of this game, finding a way to actually kind of explode when they really needed to. A big day from Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, what are your takeaways on Ohio State?
We've seen them be able to win multiple ways. Like it doesn't have to just be a shootout or just be a certain way. Like they've been able to win like an ugly game. They've been able to win games, where they had to come from behind. And this kind of reminded me of the Notre Dame game to start out the year for Ohio State, where it was a low scoring game first half. They trailed and then they were able to turn it on. And their defense kind of kept them in this game for large chunks of it. I mean, because the offense they scored 16 points through 3 quarters. That's going to be tough when you're playing a Tennessee or a Georgia, Alabama, even a Michigan to even still be in the game if you've only put up 16 points through 3 quarters. But Ohio State's good is as good as anybody's. They're kind of the same boat as Georgia a little bit. That they have there's a switch that they can still flip almost at any time. And turns out they still have really good quarterbacks and really good receivers on their team. That's kind of what. Can we talk about the defensive end, JT? You want to say his last Tuimoloau?
Yeah, something like that. We'll go with that. Everyone knows who you mean.
Okay. Is it what? How do you say it?
I think I mispronounce it too. I've been saying Tuimoloau. I don't know if that's right or whatever. Okay. JTT.
He won the game for him. Like, that dude was incredible. He was just a freak of nature. Emeka Ibuka, Marvin Harrison Jr., they didn't even really miss Jackson Smith-Njigba, who did not play and hasn't played. And is that concerning at all? Like, just to kind of throw this back to you a little bit, the lack of experience that they have, like at receiver, they're really good, but man, like they're missing Smith-Njigba for a long time now.
Well, I mean, by the time they get to the games that they can actually lose, like the Michigan and the playoff games, those inexperienced sophomore receivers will suddenly be experienced receivers with 80 catches under their belts or whatever. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
What can you say about that guy that broadcast teams haven't already been gushing about? I mean, was it a week ago they were saying that 5 years from now he's going to be the best receiver in the NFL? That's maybe a bit hyperbolic.
Yes, it is. Correct.
But can you tell me for certain that they will be wrong?
No.
There's a chance that's correct.
That's absolutely right. I think they've said that about like every single Ohio State receiver that's come out of there. Like, I'm pretty sure that like Chris Olave was going to like set the NFL on fire, and then like Garrett Wilson was as well, and then Jackson Smith-Njigba was. And like, okay, I guess like they've done okay. They haven't had bad, rookie years. The first 2 anyway. Let's give it some time. PJ Washington for Penn State, that guy could start for Ohio State any day though. Like that guy could start anywhere. That guy is a really, really good receiver as well. Mm-hmm. So I get it. I saw some stuff before the game. There were some Ohio State fans claiming that like there's 0 Penn State players that can start for this Ohio State team. 0. Like no one could. And I hear you at quarterback. Like I can even, like receiver number 1, number 2. Like, okay, I understand that.
Their corners might.
The corners, I think for sure would.
Yeah.
Maybe the defensive tackle for Penn State as well. But
Mustafer, yeah.
I think that Penn State they struggle to win these games. Like they cover the spread in these big games. But man, there's like Franklin is supposed to beat Michigan. He's supposed to beat Ohio State at some point, and he hasn't been able to with any consistency. There are Penn State fans that are very frustrated about that, to see Michigan kind of pass them up and kind of be the next one, right there with Ohio State. Penn State feels like they should be at the same place, and why aren't they?
Well, you saw a little bit of it. I mean, James Franklin, he's known for building a program, developing talent, recruiting talent. He's not known for his incredible game day acumen, which is fine. There's no perfect coaches. Everybody has a weakness to some extent. That's his weakness, and we saw it. I mean, they had a fourth down where they went for it. It was 4th and 2, I believe, in Ohio State territory. And I didn't hate the decision to actually go for it. I hated the play call, which is something that we've been able to say about Penn State for a while. I don't know if you remember, it was 5 years ago they were playing Ohio State. They had a 4th and 5 at the end of the game with a chance to win the game, and they ran the ball. It was, and that was when they had good quarterback play.
I know. Trace McSorley. Yeah.
Trace McSorley, I don't know. It is what they are. I mean, that is what they are. They don't recruit to the same level as Ohio State quite. They recruit pretty well, not quite to that level. And so in a situation like that, you either have to out-develop or you have to out-coach on game day. And Franklin is not going to out-coach many coaches on game day. He'll out-coach them game week and in the offseason. And that's probably more important. But you need something to make up that ground with Ohio State, and they just don't have that.
How long does Penn State stay patient with James Franklin?
Well, it's going to have to be a while with that contract.
Well, is it though? Is it? Like, I mean, we've seen people just pay, hey, whatever the cost is, we have to have someone new. This is a new age, Vince. We've moved on. This isn't the thing where the buyouts, just ensure that they're not going to leave. I mean, there's programs that have paid. They're paying a couple of different coaches that they fired.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're a good bet to still go like 10-2 this year. I mean, they're having a good season. You got the 5-star quarterback. You got the 5-star running back. They're both true freshmen. You can definitely sell yourself on a ceiling being raised in the next couple of years. So yeah, like they'll be patient as long as they win 9 or 10 games this year. It's not an issue at all. They have to see some improvement eventually, but you could very easily see them being like he might be their what Brian Kelly was to Notre Dame. Like he might be that coach where they're consistently 10-2, and then you roll the dice with somebody who's a better recruiter or something going forward whenever he's done. Because he very like there are programs out there with a lot of money that would love to have James Franklin.
Okay. Really? Who?
Would you have said there would have been tons of programs out there with a lot of money who would love to have Brian Kelly a year ago?
Yes. Yeah, but they're not the same. I mean, Brian Kelly at least goes to the playoff, and he's beaten some of his main like rivals. Like he won most of those games. Here, I mean, the critique for Franklin has always been the same. No one's questioning the recruiting. No one's questioning anything about that. It's that he shows up and makes dumb plays. And sometimes, and I think Kirby Smart kind of battled with the same thing as well. You're a victim to your own success with recruiting. People expect way more from you when you have all those 5 stars there. Whereas when you don't, like Dan Mullen got all kinds of slack because he couldn't recruit, but he would really develop them. And it's like, wow, that guy's a really, really good coach. And then Kirby's dumb. Like it's kind of that same argument a little bit. And I think Franklin's kind of falling into that where he recruits really good players and has 5 stars. And yet the results on Saturdays aren't what they should be. Like, I don't know. I just think he's on maybe a little less of a leash than people think. And I think because Penn State they still have like that. They could be that program. They could really be a playoff contender type. And right now they're clearly still a step behind Ohio State and Michigan. And yeah, and is that gap going to close like anytime soon? I don't know if I don't know if Franklin can close the gap on those other two guys. And I don't know. I don't know if Penn State's going to be okay with feeling hopelessly in third in the Big Ten East for, just an indefinite number of years.
Sure. Okay, moving on. Notre Dame beats Syracuse 41-24. Syracuse was undefeated until playing Clemson and Notre Dame, which we kind of saw coming, but we also, applaud Syracuse for the season they've had. This game was not particularly close. Notre Dame had the clear physical advantage the whole game. Garrett Schrader was a little bit banged up and actually came out of the game or relatively early. His backup actually kind of gave them a little more life. Looked pretty decent. That said, Notre Dame, they got some turnovers. Their defense was playing well. Their running game was pretty impressive. They sort of just imposed their will. This was kind of the Notre Dame team we thought we would see coming into the season. We've seen about 19 different versions of Notre Dame this year. This is kind of the one we expected. Did you get a chance to watch this at all? I think maybe this was a little bit during your Georgia game.
It was, yeah. I got to watch almost none of it. Just have been able to see highlights and just kind of going back and going through some of it. The one thing that does pop out just from a box score perspective is the rush yards. 250 for Notre Dame. Syracuse was 61. Game over. Like for especially a team like Notre Dame that thrives on running and then stopping the run, making Syracuse really one dimensional. So hey, big win for you guys. 5-3, huh? Big win.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk. I think that Stanford game just carries so much weight. If they don't inexplicably fumble the ball in the fourth quarter on their way to a winning score, they'd have a 6-game winning streak right now. Yeah. And the Ohio State and Marshall losses would feel like a distant memory. As it is, they're 5-3, and it feels it still feels very much like the season is a failure. How much of a failure will it be? A couple opportunities left, obviously, with Clemson and USC to make some noise, but it is good to get this type of win. Syracuse was ranked in the top 20. They were number 16. So it's a solid win. It was a good environment. Syracuse has that indoor stadium, which is just unique in college football. And props to Notre Dame for doing what they should have done. I also don't feel like much different about their team after this game. The passing game still leaves a lot to be desired. Drew Pine, 9 of 19, I believe, in the game, 1 of 5 in the second half, which tells you just kind of like that's what they were doing. They were just going to run the ball because Syracuse couldn't stop it. And the book is out there for Drew Pine. Drop 8 guys, and he's
not going to be able to pick you apart.
No, he's probably going to try to force feed it to Michael Mayer with double coverage. I don't know. But Notre Dame is 3/4 of a good team.
Okay. If you hadn't lost to Marshall and Stanford, you'd be 7-1 right now. With only a loss to Ohio State, you'd be right in the middle of the playoff conversation. So you can look at it like that's kind of the dull side and the bright side. Because you did lose to Stanford and Marshall, but like those are games that you're going to win more likely than not. So next year. There's always next year.
That's right. Okay, another game, a Big 12 game. TCU beats West Virginia 41-31. This game was pretty close most of the way before TCU kind of pulled away at the end. And we said any team in the Big 12 can beat any other team in the Big 12. TCU is probably the best team. West Virginia is one of the 2 worst teams. But this is just kind of a reminder of what the Big 12 is, which is exciting top to bottom. Nobody sucks. Everybody's pretty good.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this game? Yeah.
Complete agreement there. It's kind of like an NFL type thing where like literally anyone can beat anyone, and there's no way. I actually did bet on the Big 12 like this past week. I might even again this week. It's just not a bright move though, like on my part, like because you don't really know. You're kind of just you think you might have some ideas, but anybody can beat anybody in Big 12 play this year. That's just kind of how it's going.
Right. You have to be very careful on the betting side. Not that there's not any value there, but you do have to be careful.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
All right, Arkansas beat Auburn 41-27. I didn't watch any of this game. Notable because Brian Harsin finally got fired. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, what do you want to talk about here? Is there anything to talk about with the game, or is this mostly just? I mean, Brian Harsin is the obvious story here.
I mean, yeah, the game. I'm whatever. I mean, Arkansas is 5-3. Arkansas is actually a pretty good team. Auburn, we know Auburn. They're not a very good team. Robbie Ashford threw the ball 33 times, which is about 20 more times than he should be throwing per game. So, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, grounds enough for firing. Rocket Sanders for Arkansas, the running back, is tremendous. That dude is a stud. Him and KJ Jefferson, you put those two together, they're just, it's a really good duo. Arkansas they're consistent. Well, that's incorrect. They're talented, and they actually have a fairly high ceiling. They can beat a lot of good teams. They have 3 ranked opponents coming up after this. I think they're going to knock off a couple. I really do. I think Arkansas is maybe a little underrated right now. Vegas kind of agrees with me. On to the Auburn side, we can talk about who they're going for as a coach right now. Who would you be trying to hire? Just one name, real fast.
Oh my goodness, where do you even start? There's a number of good names. We just saw Hugh Freeze get an extension from Liberty.
Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't that he could still go?
You're right. Do you have a name? I was a little unprepared for the question, but
okay.
Is Jamie Chadwell the answer?
I was going to say maybe try to get Gus Malzahn back from UCF, and then maybe try like Bo Nix, maybe 6th year super senior type thing, and get it. No, it's a joke. Hugh Freeze is one. Dion, there's a lot of Dion buzz, possibly 2. I think Lane Kiffin's going to be the guy, though. I think that is more likely than not. Lane Kiffin not terribly happy at Ole Miss. Auburn will pay whatever. Auburn will pay literally anything for a quick result. Auburn, it's going to be easier to recruit at Auburn than it is Ole Miss right now. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
I think Lane's the guy. That's my pick right now.
You could do a heck of a lot worse than Lane Kiffin at Auburn.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, moving on. Miami beats Virginia in 4 overtimes, 14-12. This was horrible. Miami has fallen off a cliff. Virginia is also terrible. Tony Elliott, his first season at Virginia, it's not going well.
So bad.
Miami did just get Cormani McClain, so.
This was 6-6 going into overtime. 6-6.
Yeah.
4 field goals. Yeah.
Where do we go with this? I mean, because clearly some things here are not working out. Miami has to fire their offensive coordinator after this year, right?
Correct. Yes. And Virginia just needs kind of a whole new coaching staff, really. Like that was a mistake from the beginning. I still believe that. I know that's maybe a little cruel. That's not the answer. Brennan Armstrong was really good last year. He was really good last year. And to see how bad they are now, and I know they lost like all 5 offensive linemen. I understand they had a wholesale exodus. It's really, really bad for Virginia. Brendan Armstrong, I think, is actually a good player and could do well in the right system and did last year.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is not working. This is not working for either of these offensive teams. This is a game that's like for either offensive play caller is fireable. Like this alone is fireable. Yeah. It was really rough.
I have a new prediction for Brennan Armstrong. I think he's going to be Notre Dame's quarterback next year.
I like that. You're trying to get all the quarterbacks to you at Notre Dame.
They need to bring somebody in next year. There's they have to. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I do think I would rather have Sam Duggan. I think Brennan Armstrong's probably a little more realistic.
Duggan. Yeah,
Max Duggan. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Sure.
All right. Georgia beat. No, we talked about that game. I'm sorry. Kansas State beats Oklahoma State 48-0.
Yeah.
This was crazy. We talked about in the preview that Kansas State was favored by 1, and you felt like it didn't make a lot of sense. And so because of that, you went with Kansas State because you felt like Vegas wanted you to take Oklahoma State. Turned out pretty good for you. They covered that spread by 47 points.
Yeah.
And this was without Adrian Martinez, who's been their starting quarterback all year.
Yeah.
How did this happen? What in the world?
Complete splattering. Yeah. Deuce Vaughn, by the way.
Yeah.
Really, really good at the football stuff. He knows what he's doing out there. Yeah. That's the way you put it is exactly correct. There was something just smelled fishy about it. And when Vegas is just pleading for you to take one side, you always have to take the other. They don't build those casinos by accident. That's kind of what that's the mindset I went with. Still doesn't make much sense to me. It really doesn't. Oklahoma State has been the model of consistency over the past, really under Gundy. They're at least a well-coached team. They don't normally get splattered like this, 48-0. They're at least going to put up some points. They were number 9 in the nation at this point. 48-0 is that's blowout. Like, that's crazy. That offense was really good, and it made no sense for them to get blown out. None at all.
I do think Spencer Sanders is banged up.
Maybe.
And Kansas State has a good enough defense. They were able to shut down the run game. Mm-hmm. So if you can't run and your quarterback's hurt, that's a way to get shut out. Still shocking. And props to Kansas State's offense, too. You mentioned Deuce Vaughn, 158 yards and a touchdown. And his backup had 44 yards and a touchdown. Will Howard was slinging the ball around at 296, 4 touchdowns, no picks. You're going to win a lot of football games that way if you can both pass the ball and run the ball that well. So props to Kansas State coming back after that kind of a devastating loss to TCU the week before. So, yeah. We had a top 10 upset. Louisville beat Wake Forest 48-21. Did Wake Forest have literally 8 turnovers in this game? Is that what it was?
How many pick six? Yeah, they did. They had 4 fumbles, 4 picks.
Ugh.
Sam Hartman, I watched him be really good.
He's a good quarterback
to me. He is. It didn't make much sense to me. Did you watch any of this at all? I did not.
I did not. I had a busy Saturday and was not able to watch as much football as I wanted to. Yeah, but we kind of knew, I won't say we knew that Wake Forest could be this volatile. We knew Louisville was volatile. Yep. We knew Louisville had the potential to both get killed and to kill. That's what they've been doing all year. I think Scott Satterfield might hold on to his job. He was kind of a hot seat guy.
Yeah.
They're scratching together some wins, and that's a bad term for what this was. He scored 48 points. And forced 8 turnovers. So,
yes,
yeah,
they have a rough stretch coming up. Louisville. They good luck to them for the rest of the year. They get James Madison, Clemson, NC State, and then Kentucky. They could lose their next 4 quite easily. Yeah.
So maybe he should still be on hot seat watch, just depending on what happens.
Maybe. Yeah, I was gonna say let's just be a little. Let's wait just a little bit on the Saturday.
Okay. All right. Tennessee beat Kentucky 44-6. This was supposed to be a relatively close game. It's a rivalry game.
Yep.
Kentucky's known for keeping games down, but Tennessee just put up points like they have been doing all year. They're not as talented as 2019 LSU, but their offense has a few things that reminds you of that. Just no one has stopped them this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not comparing them to 2019 LSU.
That's what you just did.
No. I contrasted them a little bit by saying that they're not as talented.
Okay.
But there's a few things, just as far as the offense in particular, nobody has figured out how to stop them. Now, they're going to play easily the best defense in their schedule this week. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Let's talk about this game, though. How shocking was this to you?
This was surprising. Yeah. This one, it was classic trap game, right, for Tennessee?
Yeah.
Right, the week before the biggest regular season game that they played, well, I guess since Alabama just a couple of weeks ago. But against the defending national champions, you got to go to their place. It's on the road. Big game, easy to look ahead, really easy. They didn't at all. Will Levis, they completely shut him down. I think what surprised me the most was Tennessee's defense and how physical they were. I watched a bit of this game. They were super physical. They completely whipped Kentucky. Kentucky, even if they lose, Kentucky still they hit you. You don't really want to play them again. That's kind of Stoops' whole thing there.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee completely whipped them up front. That was very surprising. And then Hendon Hooker is going to do his thing. He's going to throw a lot of deep balls. Jalen Hyatt's going to go catch him.
Yeah.
Drew McCoy's going to be running underneath in the slot. That's what's going to happen. Dude, Tennessee's dang good.
They are.
This is hard to do. 44-6 against Kentucky. That doesn't happen. That really does not happen. And yeah, for Tennessee to do that, that should be alarm bells for everyone. Again, we'll talk more about Tennessee in the preview for next week here in just a little bit. This is a statement win for Tennessee.
Yeah. The 44 is mildly surprising because Kentucky's pretty good on defense.
Yes.
The 6 to me is way more surprising. Just the fact like Tennessee's defense is coming around.
Yeah.
We know Will Levis is not as good as he was billed in the offseason, the number one pick in the NFL draft. I think it's fairly safe to say we were correct on that one.
Yes, we called that.
But he's still a talented quarterback, and they have Chris Rodriguez, and they had nothing. 6 points. That's it. Anything else? Like, can we just bury Kentucky's season at this point?
Yeah. No, I mean, pretty much. Kentucky needed to finish second in the East. I mean, that's what they were gunning for. They did beat Florida, but you got beat so badly by Tennessee that this year will be viewed as a disappointment for Kentucky. Like you got absolutely hammered, unless somehow you pull an upset here, like late in the year for Kentucky. So I know they still do have Georgia that they can beat, but yeah, I mean, more than likely they're probably going to be 8-4. That's probably where they're at, maybe 7-5. That's not a great year for Kentucky. They want to win 9-10 games.
Another rivalry game, big evening game. Michigan beats Michigan State 29-7. Not a particularly competitive game for most of it. How much did you watch this game, and what are your takeaways?
Yeah, fair amount. The Michigan State Spartans, they really like to fight. They have a lot of fight in them. Just after the 4 quarters are done. Like if they would have hit Michigan as hard in the game as they did in the locker room, like or on the way to the locker room, maybe you score more than 7. Like maybe you score more than 7. Turns out that when you're a team that likes to run and you're not very good at running the ball, like it's going to be a really, really hard time to win against, someone like Michigan who actually likes to run the ball and can, and then does. So I'm kind of a Mel Tucker guy. I thought he was a pretty good coach. I did. Peyton Thorne should not be throwing 30 passes a game. That's like they're gonna struggle to win that way. They should not be throwing more than running. They shouldn't. They led for a decent portion of this game, especially in the first half. This was a close game. At halftime. Yeah. And I play calling is a problem for Michigan State. They're 3-5, and this could get worse.
Well, they did run for 1.6 yards per carry. It's really hard to win a football game when you do that, unless you have an incredible quarterback, which they have an average one. So Michigan State definitely a down year. What are they now? 3-5 or so.
3-5. That's right.
Yeah, so they will be struggling to make a bowl game. Mel Tucker is not about this season. I think they're trying to build something there. So we'll talk about more of that. We'll talk about them more in the offseason. One last game to talk about. Ole Miss beats Texas A&M 31-28. Kind of actually sneaky fun and exciting. The streak continues. Texas A&M has not scored 30 points on an FBS opponent in over a year. Ole Miss scored just enough. They didn't look incredible. Neither team really crowned themselves in a ton of glory this game. But Ole Miss was the more consistent team, and they clearly have the better offense. What are your takeaways on this game here?
So I think A&M might have found their quarterback. Connor Weigman is a ball player. The 5-star that came in, how he was sitting on the bench all this time, I won't know. I really won't. He's been the best that was the best quarterback performance that we've seen to this point. Like, threw for 340, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Look at that. Suddenly Jimbo, he's not a quarterback whisperer. We're never going to say he's a quarterback whisperer ever again. But he might be a quarterback whisperer. Like, it could actually be a thing. So, Connor, I don't know. Connor Weigman, you get him back with Evan Stewart, get them some time in the offense. This year's a wrap for A&M, right? I mean, they're 3-5. It's not a good year. They're going to struggle to make a bowl game. But next year they could be dangerous. Like I'm going to be buying in a little bit on the A&M hype in the offseason if they continue to grow like this, especially if Weigman finishes the season strong. I think he's got to be the starter going forward for A&M.
Yeah. Well, I think the only way that Jimbo's offense can actually work is if he has a quarterback who knows it well and is very talented. Sounds like a stupid thing to say, Um,
Okay.
but it's complicated enough. There's enough checks and all of it, and it was actually kind of interesting that the broadcast team was talking about his offense, and they were kind of calling him out on some of the lies he said about his
Yeah.
offense,
Yeah.
which was interesting. I do think
Yeah.
that if Wigman is the guy going forward, he will learn this offense better, and maybe not next year, but maybe the year after that when he's a junior and he's throwing to junior Evan Stewart.
Yes.
Like maybe by then they could be good on offense. I'm not ready to say like excellent, but maybe good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I'm with you. Like we're on the same page there. Talented enough. It's just why is Jimbo's offense? Why is it so complex? Why does he have to make it so hard on the quarterbacks? Do some things, make it like play to their strengths a little bit. He doesn't do that. Like
Yeah.
Jimbo, he has his thing, and like the quarterbacks have to kind of go into his system. Whereas I think really, really good play callers, they play to their player strengths and call
Yes.
games to their player strengths. And he's absolutely not doing that, or at least not to this point in the season.
Yeah.
So yeah, we agree there.
I think his offense would work a lot better with a 32-year-old NFL quarterback who knows exactly what he's seeing across the field from him and can make all the checks.
So if he had Tom Brady, like A&M could probably go 8-4 this year, like maybe 9-3. Is that kind of what we're saying? Something like that. Like
Yes.
like I agree with you though. I agree. It makes it so hard. It makes it so hard on his own guys that they don't understand what they're looking at a lot of the time. Just go literally cut the playbook in half and throw. There's so much that he could throw out. Like there's no shortage of plays that he could throw out of the playbook, but he keeps them all and he makes it so hard for him. So it's his own fault.
All right. I think that about wraps up the games to actually talk about. I'll just kind of roll through the rest of these. Some of the notable scores. Thursday night, there were a couple games. NC State beat Virginia Tech 22-21. Utah beat Washington State 21-17. Friday night, East Carolina beat BYU 27-24. East Carolina's pretty good, but BYU continues to kind of falter a little bit.
They do.
Saturday, Oklahoma beat Iowa State 27-13. Florida State beat Georgia Tech 41-16. Illinois beat Nebraska 26-9. They continue to kind of have a stranglehold on the Big Ten West. UCF beat Cincinnati 25-21.
Yes.
Cincinnati, perhaps, I think it's fair to say they're not nearly as good as they were a year ago. Which, they lost like 8 NFL guys or something. I think we kind of had a feeling maybe they wouldn't be quite as good, and we're starting to see that now. Missouri beat South Carolina 23-10, a week after South Carolina beats Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
This was, I don't know. There's a whole lot to say here. We still, I feel like we still don't really have a great grasp on who South Carolina really is. Their good is pretty good, and their bad is pretty terrible.
Kind of the same as Missouri. Kind of the
Sure.
same as Missouri, like for both
Fair.
of those programs. They can be really good, and they have moments where they just fall off a cliff. Yeah.
Right. USC beat Arizona 45-37, continuing their trend of good offense and questionable defense. Baylor kind of sat on Texas Tech 45-17. Impressive showing from Baylor. They've underperformed their preseason expectations this year, but maybe it seems like they're rounding into form now. And then one last game, North Carolina beat Pitt 42-24. They were actually losing in this game relatively late in the second half and kind of turned it on. North Carolina stranglehold on that side of the ACC. They're undefeated in conference play. Their offense is looking really good. I do think we're kind of bound for a North Carolina Clemson matchup coming up.
Yeah.
That feels almost like a certainty at this point.
It does. Yeah, agree.